Well, that's good. I'm glad that this class is doing good for you. This week we're going to focus more on APA. I'm going to teach you how to do the Week 10 worksheet. Usually at this point in the class, once you get past the week 10 worksheet, the rest of the class is really easy. So this is like the hardest assignment for the second half of the class. So basically, the week 10 worksheet focuses on how to use APA and teaches you how to use APA to find credible sources, to do a direct quote, the difference between a direct quote and a paraphrase quote, as well as, and then so you need to find 3 sources. So when you do your week 10 worksheet, you can either find the 3 sources for your paper, or for some other class, 3 sources, or it could be like a hobby. So the 3 sources is up to you. A lot of students decide to do the 3 sources for their comparison contrast paper. Some students in the past did their assignment for the week 9 paper. So, it's up to you where you find the 3 sources. And so in this lecture, I'm just going to go over how you find credible sources, how you do the worksheet, and you're done with all the quizzes. So that's also the hard part in the first half of the class. So that's done, and then you just go on and you're done with this class. Then you just post in week 11 and 12. You just post your comparison contrast essay, and you're done. So once you're done with this worksheet, it's like you're done with the class for the most part. So here is, let me see if I can find the week 10. Yeah, here's the week 10 instructor sheet. It should go to the very top. So I did not go to the top of the sheet. Here we go. So this week we're going to go over what is APA, how to do the week 10 credible sources assignment, the week 11 forum, different types of credible sources, different types of non-credible sources, using Kapow to evaluate for credible sources, how to avoid fallacies, and different kinds of fallacies. So during the week 9 presentation, we talked about argumentation. And so when we have during week 9, you were supposed to talk about your persuasive essay. So here are some persuasive essays from the past. And let's see, I wrote here, should healthcare workers be required to be vaccinated against COVID-19 or lose their jobs? So this was somebody's really good paper. And I think here, so that the common APA errors from the week 9 forum was that some students just gave me a web address. So when we do a reference citation, we don't just put in the web address. We need to have the author's name. So when we do a reference citation, so the reference citations come at the end of your paper. And so you have the author's name, then you have the date, then you have your article name, then you have publication name, like where did it come from? And then you have retrieved on what date, and then from web address. So when you write your reference citation, that comes on the last page, after the last page of your paper. And then when you do APA, so when do we use APA in-text citation? So APA stands for American Psychological Association, and APA is used for social science research and business research papers. We use APA when we cite medical facts, historical facts, numbers, any kind of numbers, statistics, percentages, complex facts, unusual facts, anything that is not common knowledge. So example of common knowledge would be in the US, December 25th is Christmas Day, December 24th is Christmas Eve, January 1st is New Year's Day. So we don't have to cite common knowledge. Although common knowledge depends on your culture. So in China, common knowledge would be the Chinese New Year is based on the lunar calendar. So if you're writing a paper in China, you don't need to cite that source because everybody in China knows that their calendar is based on the lunar calendar. But in the United States, you would have to cite it because it's uncommon knowledge in the United States. So sometimes common knowledge and uncommon knowledge can be cultural. So if you're not sure if something is common or uncommon knowledge, always cite the source. So to repeat, we don't cite the source if it's common knowledge, and we cite the source when it's uncommon knowledge. And so when you write your papers, you use APA in-text citations. Once again, I want to repeat: medical facts, historical facts, dates, percentages, statistics, numbers, definitions, uncommon knowledge, and controversial knowledge. And so what I did was I gave the lecture notes for this entire lecture, and I put it into your email. Did you get it, the lecture notes? So that you can read
Yes.
that. Yeah, so that way you can just read it. And these are the common mistakes. So here are some examples of what is a direct quote, what is a paraphrase quote, and what is a reference citation. And so when you do your worksheet, you have to know that a direct quote means that you quote the source exactly, like verbatim. And so in this article, it says marijuana lessens the effects of chemotherapy. That's a medical fact. Then you have to put in the author and the date, and you should have the page number, actually. So this is missing a page number. Page number. Because when we have a direct quote, we have quotation marks, then we have these three parts. And then a paraphrase quote is when we summarize the original quote in our own words. And so here you don't need quotation marks for a direct quote, for a paraphrase quote, and you don't need a page number. So that's the difference between, but even though you put the quote in your own words, you still have to cite the source. So here the original quote is marijuana lessens the effect of chemotherapy. Then you would paraphrase it as marijuana makes the side effects of chemotherapy less severe. Then you would just put in, you don't need quotation marks, and you don't need a page number. So you just put in the author and the date. Then you put the reference citation at the very end of your paper. So you have the author name, the date, the article name, the publication name, the date you retrieved the website, and then the web address. And then in your worksheet, I'm going to ask you, is this a credible source? How do you know it's a credible source? And then you're going to use KAPOW. Now I think I covered KAPOW already. So what does KAPOW stand for again?
Oh, give me 1 second. I have it. KAPOW stands for current, author, purpose, objectivity, writing style.
Okay, good. So you would say this article is credible because C, it was published in 2020, so it's within the last 10 years. A, author, it was written by a doctor, Dr. Smith. P, ad, it's not an ad, it's an educational article. O, it's objective because it's dealing with scientific medical facts, and it talks about medicine. Writing style, it has thesis with supporting sentences. So that's how you answer the question, is how do you know this is a credible source? So that's on your worksheet as well. So this pretty much, all of this is your entire worksheet. You just have to do this 3 times, is if I find 3 sources. So basically your worksheet will ask for a direct quote, a paraphrase quote, a reference citation, and then why is this credible? That's it. That's your worksheet in a nutshell. And so here are some examples. Yeah?
For the credible part, should we put the credible, why all 3 are credible? Or just like
I'll show you.
credible?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Because the worksheet is just worded more or less like this. And then you just, for each source, you're just going to answer why that particular source is credible. So I'll show you in a second. Here are some examples of in-text citations. Here you have a medical fact. Music therapy improves short-term memory. Here you have a scientific fact. The level of poverty will decrease through, one can have other benefits such as health insurance, IRAs, and paid. So here you have a scientific fact. Here you have a dollar, numbers. So in Missouri, new officers start at $13.50 an hour. So here you have to, so whenever you cite any kind of numbers, you have to cite the source. So numbers including dates, percentages, amounts, more percentages, then you have to cite the source. Historical data like reparations will be a step towards breaking generational curse of belittle. This person was talking about slavery and how African Americans should be given reparations. So that was his essay, and this was something I took from his essay. So he didn't cite anything. So I told him you need to cite author, date, and page number if you're citing historical facts. And then here, somebody did not cite their 60% of adolescents spend their last hour before their sleep on phones, and therefore they have trouble sleeping. So then you have author, date, and page number. And then here you have team-based video games can improve mental adaptability. So that's a medical fact, so you need author, date, and page number. And whenever you put author, date, and page number, this is missing a there. That means that this is a direct quote. And so here, if there was so what is APA? What does it stand for?
American Psychology Association.
When do we use APA?
Whenever we use numbers, dates, historical facts.
And what is the difference between a paraphrase quote and a direct quote?
A direct quote is directly from the thesis they propose, and a paraphrase is you put it in your words, but still supporting the thesis from the You put it in your own words.
You put it in your own words, and even if you put it in your own words, how is the citation, in-text citation, different from a direct quote?
How is it? I mean, it's different because a direct one is a portion of it.
Yeah, direct quote has quotation marks, and then it has author, date, and page number. So that's a direct quote. Do we need the page number for a paraphrase quote?
No.
No. Do we need quotation marks for a paraphrase quote?
No.
And if we have long quotes, like over 3 lines, do we still stick it in the paragraph, or do we use a block quotation?
A block quotation.
Is a block quotation single spaced or double spaced?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with single
spaced, yes. What about the regular paragraph? Is your regular paragraph single spaced or double spaced?
Double spaced.
That's it. That's correct. Okay, so what is the difference between an in-text citation and a reference citation?
Ooh.
So what's the difference?
Reference.
So an in-text citation occurs inside the body of the paper, and then the reference citation is what you put at the end of your paper when you put the whole thing. So your in-text citation just includes your author and date. Then your reference citation includes the rest of it. So that's why your in-text citation and your reference citation should match. So if you use John Jones and John Smith, then in your reference citation at the end of your paper, you should have John Jones and John Smith, except longer, okay? So that way, if I'm the reader, okay, and I see, oh wow, 60% of adolescents lose sleep, and it's by John Smith, where's the article? I want to see more of this. I want to look it up on the internet. Then I click down all the way to the end of that paper, and I see, oh, it's John Smith with this article, and on that website, and then I would cut and paste it and stick it and find the website, and then I read the actual article from which this came from. So that's the reason why we have it. So when you do research, you're going to start to appreciate how well someone did their in-text citations, okay? So right now you're not researching. Are you researching other people's papers? When you start writing papers, that's what you have to know APA. Oh, and I had an article, I don't have it here right now, but in the LA Times, if you look it up, a USC professor was caught with plagiarism because he did not properly use his APA. half the article says that these half your book comes from other sources on the internet you did not attribute to the author. Therefore, we have to halt publication of your paper until you put in your APA in-text citations. This made the front page of the LA Times. This guy got majorly embarrassed by all of this. He had to apologize to USC because it makes USC look bad, University of Southern California. So that was on the front page of the LA Times. So that's the real world consequence if you don't use your APA. So because these days everyone can just Google it and easily find out if something is plagiarized. All right, so what is a reference citation? This comes from your interactive lecture. And so this is, you put your author's last name is always first, followed by the first initial, then the last name, and then the first name, then the initial. Then you have the year of publication, and then you have where it came from, name of the article, publication, and then the date you retrieved the website, and then the very last thing you have is your website address. So this is your worksheet. So I wanted to show you what your worksheet looks like. And so here it would be, this is web source number 1, okay? Your source number 1. So here my source number 1 is the adverse impact on the US. So no one has any trouble doing these. That's why I didn't go over it. What is the website link? What's the title of the article? What is the title of the website? So that this would be the here in 1 to 3 sentences. Explain why this source is credible, and that's where you put in your kapow. Then you put in the CA whatever, and then you have a quote. It's not going to say direct quote. I think that's a mistake on the worksheet, but it's just going to say quote with APA in-text citation. They mean to say direct quote, okay? The first one's direct quote. So you would say, before the vaccine, 70% of people with COVID died. Smith, 2020, page 20. So you take a sentence from the article to cite it. Then the second one, it does say in the worksheet, paraphrase. So then you have your paraphrase, citation. And so before the vaccine, most people died of, so I paraphrased it. And you don't need quotation marks, you don't need page number, and you just put in the author's name and the date. Then your reference citation comes at the end of your paper where you write, so see how it matches Smith and Smith, Smith Patrick, 2020. Your dates should also match. And then you have the name of your article, the severity of COVID, which doesn't match the title of the page. I should change that to the severity of COVID, because that should match. The title of your page should match the severity of COVID. All right, now everything matches. So then you have your article name, the severity of COVID, then American Medical Journal, the name of the journal, then what edition, like what volume, like volume 25, edition 6 or 7 or something like that, pages 23 to 25. Okay, you got to include whatever the page is. Then retrieved, today's date, which is no longer February 25th, so you can tell when this was written. So then it becomes March 15th, 2023 from www. whatever website, should have an HTTP here, HTTP, something like that. And so that's your full reference citation. And so that's basically the whole, that's for one source. Now for source number 2, it's the same thing. It's just a different article, okay, from a different website. And you do the same thing. Website link, title of the page, title of website, and cancer in society. So that should also match. Let's see, cancer, yeah. So anyway, so you title of the page, title of website, in 1 to 3 sentences, explain why the source is credible, and then this is why the source is credible. Then you have your direct quote with your quotation marks, then you have your paraphrase quote without the quotation marks, and then you just have your author and the date, and then the reference citation. And then source number 3 does the same thing. And so, am I going too fast?
No.
No, okay. So learning the proper usage of APA helps students avoid plagiarism. That is failure to give credit to a researcher. So you don't end up like the idiot USC guy on the front page of of LA Times, who says we're halting all. He has to rewrite his entire book. And anyway, so now getting on to the week 11 forum. And so, so what I'm going to do is I'll post that plagiarism article in the week 11 forum, and then you'll see for yourself. This is what happens when you don't use your proper APA. Anyway, so for your week 11 forum, that's where you're going to place your rough draft of your comparison contrast essay. Some people got confused and posted their rough draft of their comparison contrast essay in the week 9 forum, which they weren't supposed to do. They were supposed to choose something from the procon.org. So anyway, here, so for week 11, here you have somebody's, you could read this over, so I'm not going to go over it. So notice how you put the, then you're going to put references. Let's see. And this should also be spaced over. Yeah. Then you're going to put references, and then you're going to put in your then you're going to put it in your reference citation. The name of the article, the name of the author, the date. Childhood is great. This should be italicized, and then childhood is great. Great should be capitalized. Basically, well, anyway. So this was basically someone's. And then when you post your peer review, you would give actionable, when you sample post it to students, you would say, oh, Jan, you have a thesis with 3 reasons. You write about how books are better than movies because books improve language skills. Books enhance imagination. And I love the way your thesis is the last sentence of the first paragraph. And your body paragraphs match your thesis. You have great bodies, you have great essay structure. But you need a comma after a transition word. Overall, excellent work, or something like that. So for people who are still having trouble with their peer review, this is going to be the last forum in which you have to do this. Some people are so relieved this is the last forum. And then, because a lot of people, I get the impression a lot of people don't like doing peer reviews, even though I tell them that nobody's ever going to laugh at you. But anyway, so this will be the last time you ever have to do a peer review where you give an actionable suggestion. So that's it. Are you clear about how to do the week 10 worksheet?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So whenever I looked up a website, whenever I was looking up a website for my last week 9 and my other classes, I tried to use the APA format. But whenever I came to, I'm using the websites like .gov or .edu, the author
is missing.
Author's missing.
Yeah, I know. And so if there's no author, that's very typical of cdc.org. So you would have to write Centers for Disease Control for the author, or you write CDC. Then you write your date, 2022. Then you write the article name. Because it's very typical for CDC for just have staff wrote it. CDC website, and then retrieve today's date from web address. If you're missing if you're missing the date, then you could write Smith Patrick, then you write ND, and then you write the rest of it. If you're missing both, then you write the website name. Then you write ND, and then you write the rest of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
And then that way, because you wrote the website name already, then you could just write CDC, or you can write the alphabet soup. Normally, you have to type that out. And also, one thing I did not teach about APA is that you can have different ways of writing your APA in-text citation. Did I already go over signal phrases and things like that?
I can't remember right now.
Okay, so if I could say Smith states blank 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 2020 page 22, or I could say Smith 2020 states blank 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 and then page, and then I would write page 22. Then I could say, what else? Smith, let's see. So there are many different ways. Hold on. 2020, page 22 states, or you could have, according to Dr. Smith of the CDC Institute. Of course, I'm making this up off the top of my head, but then you would write 2020, and then you would write your. So there are many different ways of writing signal phrases. Those are just a couple. I think I did a whole video on like 10 different kinds of signal phrases. Then you could have many different kinds of, instead of saying states all the time, you can Google signal phrases verbs, and then you're going to get yourself a list of, so you don't say states. It will give you a different set of list of signal phrase verbs for agreement and disagreement. So if I say that Fauci or whoever it is, Smith, agrees with and says, or Smith disagrees and says. So you could have that sort of thing. It's so that your list of signal phrases should have things that different kinds of verbs where you agree with it, and different kinds of verbs in which you disagree with it. And so I made that a different video, and it's on my Professor H. I think it's on my Professor H. Writing channel. Is signal phrase, how to do a signal phrase. I think, unless it's still on my computer and I didn't upload it yet. So that's possible too. So how to do a signal phrase, or how to do signal phrases or something like that, I think. So you could go to my Professor H video. Anyway, so now if you're clear on the week 10 worksheet, at this point a lot of people go, okay, I don't have time anymore, I'm going. And then if you want to stay, I'm going to talk about what are reliable sources and what are unreliable sources. And so reliable sources, from LIRN, stands for your the Fortis College library. I forget what the exact whatchamacallit, but that's what they call themselves. Learning, resource, learning. I think learning and resource. I forgot what the I stands for. Institutional resource, learning, institutional resource. And I forgot what N stands for. I'll look that up. But anyway, it's your online library. So what are the primary and general reference resources? And so when you have primary sources, these are the original sources, such as if you're the first witness, like Lincoln, he witnessed Civil War. So when Lincoln talks about the Civil War, he's talking about it from a first person point. He saw it, he experienced it. And so that's called a primary source, when that person actually experienced it, writes about it. So that occurs in conference presentations, dissertations, memoirs, photographs and paintings, speeches, works of literature, and government documents. So those are all primary sources, and these are all reliable sources. Secondary sources means that, I'm writing about President Lincoln. I didn't actually see the Civil War, but I'm writing about a biography about President Lincoln and about the Civil War. That's secondary source. Secondary source means that these sources analyze or comment on the primary source. So if I write a book in which I'm analyzing the diary of President Lincoln, that's a secondary source. Whereas the actual diary of President Lincoln is the primary source. Do you understand? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So here's secondary sources like biographies, literature reviews, articles written about primary sources. And then encyclopedias are also, not Wikipedia, but encyclopedias are reliable sources. So encyclopedias, world fact books, dictionaries, atlases, and manuals. And this was what people looked at before they had the internet. People had a set of encyclopedias in their houses. Are you old enough to remember the World Book Encyclopedia? Or
my family had a lot of encyclopedias, had like a whole shelf.
So if you ask your grandparents, so what did you use before the internet? They will answer encyclopedias or World Book. Okay, so grandparents or at this point in time, probably great grandparents or something like that. And then in the library, anything in the library is also online. It's also reliable. So books, periodicals, reports, videos, and journals. And in a regular library, they have a reserve room where everybody shares those particular resources. And so let's say you have a rare collection of President Lincoln's what he wrote. Well, you don't want to give that out to the general population. Usually that's put under glass or something like that. Or some librarian watches you as you look at the book and put it back, as if like a museum. They got people standing there to make sure you don't walk away with it. And so that's a reserve room. I go to the one in UCLA. That's pretty cool. Reliable sources from the online library. So what is a peer-reviewed article? So what is a peer-reviewed article? You should know that by now.
Yeah, so whenever we review, let me see how to say it better. So I post something and my peers review my work with appropriate criticism.
Almost.
Constructive or constructive criticism.
Yeah. So for you guys, it's like when you guys peer review each other's papers, but then in the real world, let's say I write an article, then the publisher is going to, before my article gets published, the publisher is going to have other editors or other people look at my article and then correct my article. Then they send it back to me, and then I have to recorrect my article based on what a whole bunch of other experts say. Then it gets published, you see. That's known as a peer-reviewed article. So for instance, I did an article, I think I wrote it back in February, and I guess it takes all the way until June for them to get back to me to find people to edit it. And then you have to wait for people to actually do the editing before, I think it's going to be July or something, that I get my article back. And then they expect you to fix it, like the way I would tell you got to write 5-paragraph essay structure, you got to rewrite it. Well, I've got to rewrite it based on their editors. And then once I rewrite my article based on what those editors say, which is going to be in July, then I resubmit what everybody, then it becomes a peer-reviewed article. So that's why a peer-reviewed article is so much more reliable than just someone who just self-publishes right off their computer without anybody else looking at it first. So out of all of it,
how do I know if it's been peer reviewed? Is it like whenever you whenever you post an
oh
article,
yeah,
how do I know?
in the library you can tell, because basically when you go to the online library and you go to the search engine, you check the box that says first you put in your topic, the benefits of owning a dog, for instance. Then you want then you check the box, peer-reviewed articles. Then you press submit, and all of your hits are just going to come up with peer-reviewed articles.
Okay.
That's the wonders of technology. In my day, my graduate advisor would simply tell me to my face, these particular journals are all peer-reviewed, and I want those exact journals pulled from the library shelves. So I would have to physically go look for it using the Dewey, the number system, and then pull those out and put it on her desk so she could study it. This is all pre-internet, okay? That's how you did it. And I was hired as a graduate. So basically the internet has pretty much gotten rid of that job because you could just do it yourself. Just like it got rid of secretaries because you just email it yourself. Who needs a secretary to type it for you? Anyway, so the most reliable, and this comes from your interactive lectures. So the most credible and reliable sources are the peer-reviewed articles from your university online library. And then here to visit the Fortis library, if you're in your interactive lectures, you would click on here and it would take you to the Fortis library. And the online library, which means the Fortis library, has databases, and all those databases have peer-reviewed articles. In other words, in order for that article to be published, a whole bunch of people have to tell the author, you got to fix this, you got to fix that, you got to fix this. That's how I found out what it was. Then you fix everything, and then you submit it. So by the time you see the submitted article, it's already, all the mistakes have already been fixed by a whole bunch of editors. I don't even know who those editors are. They're just invisible. You just get it back with, oh, red, fix this, fix that. You're missing an in-text citation here, missing an in-text citation there. And you just have to go back and fix it. So that's how you know. And other highly credible sources are government-issued websites such as the CDC or any other website ending in .gov. So this is also in your interactive lecture. University and college sites are great sources too, and anything that ends in .org. And then here you have the popular source means that like the newspaper, anything like popular culture. In other words, things that are not scholarly. That's a popular source, like Google. Peer-reviewed source, Google Scholar. So that's the difference. If you want to find something on Google, you'll end up with popular sources. And if you want peer-reviewed sources, we go to Google Scholar, because Google Scholar pulls its articles from the library databases. So that's the same thing. So if you're having trouble with your online library, then I tell my students to go to Google Scholar. And I think that Fortis Library actually tells you on its website you can go to Google Scholar. Have you been using the Fortis Library?
Not yet, no.
Oh, okay. So you could try it out, and basically it's pretty simple. You put in your topic name, and then or you could you could look at all the different databases, okay, and then you find the database that most matches your topic. And then, for example, if you go to the business databases, then you could look up a business topic. You could type in your business topic. And I think that I have a LIRN video that I might have posted. Did I post that to the announcements? How to use your Fortis Library?
Let me see.
Possible. I don't remember. So I'm going to have to look that up, because I typically do it for week 10. I might not have done it for this class, but I will go take a look. But I will remember it because I just said so. The popular source rarely has any credentials, no degrees, no professional status, expertise. You may be left wondering who wrote this article, whereas in a peer-reviewed article, you have authors will be experts in their fields, and other authors, also experts in their fields, have already looked at the article before it got published. Then you have articles about a broad audience for popular sources, whereas a peer-reviewed source, papers are written by experts, usually for other experts, and it's always written in a formal tone. In other words, they use third-person case. This is why I keep telling everyone, Sam likes dogs because he thinks dogs are affectionate. Now, people think it's very odd to write about yourself in the third-person case. You might think that sounds very stiff and unnatural. But the reason why I had everybody write in the third-person case is that when you read peer-reviewed articles and when you write your academic paper, which is considered, it's considered academic, then you have to write in a formal tone. That was why. And then if you're writing for a broad audience, then you can write in a more casual tone, like you should buy my product because you are going to benefit from my washing machine. Okay, that's a casual tone written for a broad audience, typically in ads. Okay, so that's popular source. Articles may have short summaries of research. Yes, that's true. In other words, according to Dr. Smith, 70% of people who smoke die of lung cancer or something like that. So they may have some in-text citations. So it's true that popular sources may have some medical, scientific percentages in order for them that they want to back up their source. Whereas here, peer-reviewed source has typically in great detail the author's research findings, his methodology, his entire science paper will be inside a peer-reviewed source. Now in the week 11, I'm going to go over how to write a science paper, okay? And what are the different parts of a science paper? So that in your field, science, the social sciences, it's important to understand the different parts of a science paper so that you someday can write your own science paper, and then you can understand how to read other people's science papers, and you get to learn which science paper is valid and which science paper is not valid. And so I will go over that in the week 11. That's next week. So I'll go over the different parts of a science paper. And then I'll even give you my science paper, although I'll simplify it somewhat, so because now I'm a linguist and you're not a linguist. So that's also something you will be doing. If you're going to write for the general population. Let's say you get hired to write about using your medical expertise to write about something medical. You're not going to write the way in the formal tone that you wrote for other experts. You're going to simplify it so that every Dick, Harry, and Larry can understand what's going on. All right, so I was watching a movie recently in which the character who's a doctor was trying to explain what because the reporter says, so what is your research, Dr. Smith? And then he starts to get into all his jargon about nano materials and all that kind of stuff. And then the reporter goes, can you put that in language that we can understand? That was what the reporter said. So yeah, you would, if you're going to write about, if you get a job writing about medical stuff for, say, Time magazine or something, you have to dumb it down. Not dumb it down. You have to make it easier for people to understand, and in a casual tone. And so here are some more. Here, authors don't typically cite their sources in popular sources. This is why Wikipedia, which is a popular source, is not considered reliable, because otherwise, if you have no sources, I could just make up anything I want. And so here you always have to cite your sources, not only to prove that what you're saying is true, but also to give credit to the researcher. If you just cite other people's facts without citing the source or giving credit, then you end up like that idiot USC doctor on the top of LA Times having to apologize and having his book halted. I think he was writing a book about happiness. Well, obviously he's got to remember to cite his sources if he wants to be happy, as part of his happiness. Too bad I don't remember his name. So articles may contain popular sources might contain a lot of photographs or illustrations, but here they seldom include photographs, but include tables, graphs, and data, and may seem bland at a glance. And here, journal has no strict editor or deadlines for submission. For me, my submission was supposed to be June 14th. Then they're going to, in other words, there's a date for everything. So when I do for teachers. So for you, it would be nursesjournal.org or something like that. If you write a nursing article about a better way to treat such and such, and you want to tell other nurses that a better way to bandage such and such a wound, that you found that such and such a bandage is way better than the other kind of bandage to put on such and such a wound, something like that, and you're just telling your fellow nurses a better way to do something, that would be a kind of similar to me teaching other teachers a better way to discipline my students. Then you would be writing an academic research paper for then it would be considered peer-reviewed source. Okay, so everyone does it. All right, it doesn't matter if you're a nurse, it doesn't matter if you're a teacher. Everybody writes something like this because it looks really good on the resume to have a whole list of peer-reviewed articles that you wrote, because it makes you look very scientific. Then you stand out from your peers because everyone else would just have work experience. You have work experience and academic experience tied in, okay, in addition to your degrees and stuff like that. So that you always want to stand out. And so here you have, that's it. Unreliable sources are things like Wikipedia, blogs, tweets, personal pages. Some sites, I don't think they even have answer.com anymore, forums, and biased sites. I'm going to go over what a biased site is. I think there was one called I Hate Nazis or hatenazis.com or something. Anything that has extreme words in it is a bias in which you talk about only one side of a topic. And so unreliable sources can be highly interesting and insightful, but they may and sometimes may lead to valid information, but most of the time it leads to conspiracy theories, propaganda, or like in the case of Wikipedia. And Wikipedia does say we are missing our citations. Then they ask you to put it in for them, okay? Which, if you're looking up a site, do you want to be putting in their in-text citations for them?
No.
No, because you're looking to them for sources, not the other way around. So what are some examples of reliable sources?
Anything with the gov or the EU.
Okay, and what is the most reliable source you can find? Where would you find that?
The library, the Fortis library, or the Google Scholar.
Google Scholar. And how do we find how do we know that something is peer reviewed in the online library?
You click on a box and it brings you. You click on the box that says peer reviewed,
Yes.
and
Yeah, just
brings
like,
you all the.
yes. Just like when you set up your Microsoft Word and you click the box that says, I want it to correct my grammar. There's a box for that. If you unclick the box, it's not going to correct. Microsoft Word is not going to correct your spelling and grammar. So there is a box for that too. What are some examples of unreliable sources?
Wikipedia, blogs, anything. The majority of endingwith.com.
Yeah, the majority. Yeah, Google, a lot of Google, and ads. Anything like an advertisement is unreliable because they just want to biased sources. And then here you have kapow, and currency, authority, purpose, objective, writing style. I wish I could take credit for making this, but this has been posted so many times, I don't think anyone knows who did it. That's what happens with teachers. When one teacher makes a beautiful poster, then 1,000 other teachers will grab it for their classrooms, and pretty soon the original teacher is left going, huh? That kind of stuff. Teachers are notorious for that when it comes, but as long as it's for education, they think, well, but anyway, you're supposed to always give credit. Here are some examples of unreliable sources. So here you have this could be your Facebook, your whatchamacallit, and then you say here something sponsored by Lindango, sponsored by Beinrite. Would you say that these are reliable sources, or are they ads?
Ads.
Do we believe in ads?
No.
It does look at this. Federal stimulus plan cuts your house payment. Doesn't that look so official that people will click on it and think that's real? Because it's standing right next to other real, so they hide themselves very well. So you have to look for words like sponsored by or ads, so that way you know that it's not reliable. Okay, and so what is the difference between Google and Google Scholar again?
The difference. I mean, Google is Google Scholar. You find credible.
Right, that's the difference.
Peer review, and Google, you don't find credible.
Right. So if you're going to use Google for let's say you have a very simple topic, and Google Scholar doesn't have those articles, so you have to use Google. That's when you use kapow. We use kapow when we are stuck with using Google. Okay, because in Google you're not sure if what you're getting is credible or not. So then you have to analyze that article, and then if that article undergoes, let's see, is it within the last 10 years? Then you can look at A, you look at the website. Hey, does it have an expert? Or P, is it some kind of ad? As soon as you say it's a Prevagen, and if you take Prevagen, you'll have better memory than P, purpose, right away. And then X to that website, and you go on to the next. So that's how you weed out the reliable and unreliable sources. If you're using Google, that's when we use kapow. Does that make sense? You kapow it.
Yes, ma'am.
And then Google Scholar, you don't have to kapow it because it's already, that's why they got the scholar in there. Scholar standing for scholarly sources. So there, and then are these scholarly or non-scholarly sources for your academic paper?
Non-scholarly.
Yeah, so our love got us through. Do you believe or not believe what they say? Or with a grain of salt?
I mean, some of them, like the cooking one, I can go with that. Whenever they have, like, let's say the president, like whatever he says, but I don't know. Like it depends on the.
It depends on the magazine. Yeah, usually there's not much to make up when it comes to slow cooker or baking or Mediterranean, because you could always just try it out. You become the peer editor, okay, to see if the recipe works. And so and then of course cozy spaces. I've tried those out. They usually it does work, except that the decorations are so expensive. So you got to make it yourself. And then recognizing fake news. So if you see on the website, what do they look like now? You see a picture of a beautiful some child star, and it says, what happened to them now? And they have big emotions. That's called clickbait. and all they want to do is for you to click on it, and then somebody earns money. So anything that's fake news is something with a lot of emotion and tone. And then if the source is unknown and does not pass kapow, too many images. And of course, do you believe what you see on social media?
Me?
No.
No, because people make things up on social media, and then everybody else goes, really? Is that what happened? And that sort of thing. And so non-credible sources is the opposite of credible sources. So non-credible source are news stories that are false. The story itself is fabricated with no verifiable facts, sources, or quotes. And another word for a non-credible source are fallacies. In other words, illogical arguments are used to mislead the public or provide propaganda to confuse the public. Fake news causes mistrust, misinformation, and manipulation. And then usually I talk with, if I have several students, do you believe everything you see? Do you trust the news from? Because a lot of people do believe that, and that's not quite it. And then I also have, have you ever had people gossip about you?
Yeah.
I'm Puerto Rican.
That's
the
the life
of
of
us.
Oh, but has anyone ever negatively gossiped about you?
Yes.
Yes.
They have. And have you ever gossiped about someone else?
No, I hated it growing up
because
because that's I don't like gossiping.
I just
I just stay quiet.
So basically, whenever you gossip about someone, I would tell students that, because I've had students who told me that they've been the victim of gossip. When you gossip about someone, you're making a claim with no credible evidence. So if you say something damaging like Mrs. Smith is, she's married, but she's also going out with Mr. Kent, and the husband is always the last to know. The husband is sitting, this is a faculty teaching room, and that husband's sitting just a few tables away while Mrs. Kent is sitting on the other side of the faculty room, and people in the middle are saying that she was seen with some other guy or something like that. And this is a true story. I think that it was a true story in one of the first jobs I was at, in which somebody gossiped about one teacher erroneously going out with somebody else or with a student, and then that teacher got kicked out of the school. It turned out to be false, but no, by the time it got around that it was false, no one believed it anymore. In other words, the damage was done. So we always, whenever we make a claim, we skip the gossip, and we always make sure whenever we say something about someone that we can back it up with credible evidence. In other words, you see, I'm Chinese American. Yeah, you can see it because it's right on my face, right? Yeah. So that's a claim with I don't know. So people have said, so gossip can ruin a reputation. So here are some 10 types of fake news. Propaganda, adopted by governments and nonprofits, appeals to emotion, can be beneficial or harmful. So propaganda for like China, for instance, would say, we are a wonderful country. We never make mistakes. We always have wonderful inventions. We never have any crime. People here are perfect. That sort of thing, okay? In other words, you make yourself look good. Putin would tell, I think Putin is telling the Russian people that Ukraine is a war against Nazism. I think that's propaganda. In other words, you make yourself look good, and you're manipulating public opinion and you're making a claim without any credible evidence. So that's propaganda. Clickbait, eye-catching, sensational headline designed to distract, often misleading. The content may reflect a headline. It drives ad revenue. And so you've seen the picture of a naked woman, and then you feel like, oh, at least for a guy anyway, they want to click it. For a woman, it's a beautiful man with rippling muscles. Then you want to click to see, ooh, what's behind that one? Okay, so that's clickbait. I'm not so interested in the women part, but because they always look. But sponsored content, and so this was what I showed you earlier, right? Where it looked federal stimulus. It looked real. So you got sponsored content. Partisan content includes interpretation of facts, but might claim to be impartial. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, any of those TV channels, they pretend to be nonpartisan. They pretend to be objective. But MSNBC and CNN.com are all for the Democrats. Fox News and Breitbart are all for the Republicans. And so they are very partisan news, which means that they take sides. And when you want to see news, you want to see news that's objective. Then you would go to allsides.com. Then you see the news from all sides. That's what you believe in. We don't believe in partisan news. Conspiracy theories means that, oh, did you know we all came from Mars? Oh, really? We did? Okay, so everybody believes claims that has no evidence, no credible evidence. Pseudoscience, same thing, in which you say that a certain medicine, I think in the 19th century, they would say, and if you drink this bottle of water, you could be 21 years old forever. And you give it to a 90-year-old, she drinks it, and suddenly she's 21 years old. Okay, that's pseudoscience. We know that, I think there's a word for that. I forgot what that word was. But anyway, so, snake oil, that's it. It's right here. Snake oil, anything with snake oil. And that was very, very popular in the early 20th century. You had salesmen with all of these bottles, and they would just make claims that this will make you young again, or this will help you grow hair, or whatever. And then people would buy it, and you see that in all the old westerns. You always see the guy with all the bottles coming. He's always usually comic relief, though, because the audience knows that it's all fake, but it's always funny. But it's true, they had snake oil salesmen in those days, and he made a lot of money. These days, I think it's vitamins. So my friend says, anything vitamin. Yeah, some people think, and then you've got more. Satire, hoax, misinformation includes a mix of factual, false, or partly. In other words, they mix the fake, and they mix it just like with that sponsored federal stimulus. They make it look real. And then false attribution, counterfeit, websites and Twitter accounts that pose as a well-known brand or person. So that you can look up, counterfeit websites. There were a couple of those that pretended to be CBS or something like that. It looked so real. Then you have satire, like www.onion.com. The Onion, they tell you right straight out that they are satire. So when you read their articles, sometimes it's really funny. So of course, you know not to believe. But there was one very, very important politician who read the Onion and thought it was real. And the Onion was making fun of him. And he was going all over the place telling everyone, going, this website's making fun of me. And then everyone had to say, that's just satire. That wasn't real. Yes, it was real. It was published on the website. It's real. So not everything that's printed on the website. That's another thing. People think that something that's printed, everything that's printed's got to be real. So that's the whole purpose of this presentation, is to tell people, no, everything printed is not real. And you could go to the Onion yourself. That's why it's good to know what something is a satire or not. So here are some example of, that's a clickbait for guys, okay? So that's what a guy would go for. Sponsored ads. So sponsored ads might look like this, okay? This is an ad, and so we don't believe in sponsored ads. Propaganda would look something like this. Xinhua Net, anything in that any of those Chinese newspapers translated into English looks something like this, in which everything looks so beautiful and everything is perfect. And there's nothing, in other words, if you look at an average newspaper, you see crime, you see good news, you see bad news, someone got shot, someone didn't get shot, someone got raped, someone didn't get whatever, but here, it's just all good news, good news, good news. Hey, even say happy life there, to push it in. So here it's called propaganda, which means you want the whole world to think that you are perfect. You have no crime. Oh, we're getting rid of poverty. We don't even have poor people in our country. Everyone's rich and happy. And so like a fairy tale or something like that. So that's called propaganda. And both Putin, Xi, and I think that North Korean guy does it too. Mm-hmm. And so this is an example of media bias, where you just cherry pick your facts and you only talk about one side of an issue instead of talking about both sides of an issue. So if you only talk about one side of an issue, that's known as a biased, partisan fallacy.
Propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda. Not just propaganda, but all of these are just one-sided. You just talk about this one is one-sided because they just want you to buy their whatever product, and therefore their product is perfect. If you're going to sell a product, are you going to talk about the defects of the product? No, but if you want to be
No.
truthful and you want to objective, then you talk about not only the good sides and you not just talk about the bad sides you have to talk about the good sides and the bad sides. That's the kind of news you get. So if you go to allsides.com, then they tell you from the left, from the center, from the right, and they tell you the points of view of everything. So let's say Biden makes a speech. Okay, on the right, they think this. On the center, they think this. On the left, they think. On the left would be Democrats. On the right would be Republicans. In the middle is the average Joe. In other words, straight in the middle. So you want to have something to be unbiased. That's what you believe in. Okay, so that goes with the kapow. The O in kapow is objectivity. Talk both sides of an issue, and then it's something to be believed. Then it is a credible source. Does that make sense? All of these,
Yes, ma'am.
when you have propaganda, that's not a credible source because it violates the O in kapow. That's basically almost all of these violate the O in kapow. Satire violates the P, purpose, in kapow because it's not serious. So the purpose in kapow, it's got to be educational, informative. It cannot be something like ha 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 ha. It's not entertainment. So that's not a credible source. So that violates the P in kapow. And so here is an example. LA mayor prevents his kid from lazing about by installing spikes on family couch. Do you think that really happened?
No,
it wasn't spikes.
On the couch.
It wasn't on the couch.
Right. So, or they're rubber. But the guy was just trying to prove a point to his kid, and so you would inflate your headline. But this actually came from the Onion, so everyone knows it's satire. So this is just an example of satire. And so you should go to the Onion. It's really funny. Would you use satirical articles as a reliable source for your paper?
No.
No, not unless your paper is about satire. Here are some more misleading headlines, manipulated videos. Now they can make a deep fake video where they can have a picture of you and then someone else's lips saying something else. In other words, it would look like you're saying something really bad when actually you didn't. They can do that.
They're trying to ban that right now.
Yeah, they're doing that for translation of films usually. But yeah, it's called deep fakes. And you can't really tell if something is a deep fake. You have to reverse engineer it on Google search to make sure. But most people don't have the time. People just look at the video and say, "Oh, is that what happened? Okay, let's share it." And so that's why you have to before you share something, you need to make sure it's correct. Most people don't, and even I don't sometimes. So here, sponsored stories. Do we believe all these sponsored stories?
Energy bill. No.
They're all sponsored. Okay, so usually after you read your real article and you scroll down, that's where the sponsored stories appear. Okay, so it makes it look like there are more articles to read when actually it's all sponsored. So sponsored violates the P section of kapow. In other words, the purpose. So if the purpose is an ad, then it's not a reliable source. So all of this has to do with kapow, P, purpose. So more sponsored stories because it says here sponsored stories you may like. And then what is a conspiracy theory? What is a conspiracy theory? And what is bias challenging?
Conspiracy theory is
unchecked
information that people believe.
Rumors. Rumors, gossip. A theory that explains an event or set of circumstances as a result of a secret plot by usually powerful conspirators. The conspiracy theories surrounding Kennedy's assassination. In other words, some people think that a whole bunch of people assassinated Kennedy when only one person assassinated Kennedy. And so you make claims with no evidence, and you say secrets. So it makes you seem like you're paranoid. So you have.
I'm reading the last ones in that paragraph. Made me laugh.
Yeah. There was one in which Trump said that COVID would be over by that Easter. That would have been Easter of April of 2021, I think. He said by April 1st, COVID will be over. What about fake moon landing? There's also
I've been seeing a lot of that recently. Makes me laugh too.
The Earth is flat. And if you take the vaccine, they're putting a microchip into you. Alien technology. So all of these are all conspiracy theories because you're making a claim with no credible evidence. Bias challenging means that you confirm your bias. So confirmation bias means, why do people love social media so much? It's because you in social media you have a whole bunch of people who believe the same thing that you believe, and then you all hang out together. That's known as confirmation bias, the tendency to process information by looking for information that is consistent with one's existing beliefs. So that's why Democrats like to watch the TV channel that talks about how Democrats are great. Republicans watch the TV channel where Republicans are great. That's not real news. Real news talks about the good and the bad of each side. You don't just talk about what's good about Biden or what's bad about Biden. So that's why if you watch Walter Cronkite, but it's boring. See, that's the thing. The reason why the news is so partisan these days is that telling the both sides of the story is boring. You see, if you watch Walter Cronkite, you feel like falling asleep. He did tell the both in the 60s, he would just tell you, and on the Republicans think, blah, 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 and then the Democrats think, blah, blah, blah. Now in other news, blah, 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 like that. That was his whole tone. And now they try to manipulate you by saying, and you know what those Republicans think? But we Democrats, we know better. And so then it becomes more partisan. It's very second grade. I remember in second grade when one kid goes, I have a secret. You want to know what the secret is? And everyone whispers the secret. And so basically you cherry pick your facts and you don't tell both sides of a story. And so confirmation bias means you're only interested in your part of the story. You don't care about what the other side thinks. You only think what you think is right, and you only like people who think what you think. Everyone else, you unfriend them or you move away from them. That's the newest trend. People moving from blue states to red states or red states to blue states. Not because people used to move because they want a better school district. Now people move to be with other Democrats or to be with other Republicans. Mm-hmm. That is like so, and I blame all of this on social media, on Facebook to be exact. Zuckerberg is, and he actually was brought up to the Senate for this. You know, all of this division, I put it on Zuckerberg's head. And so this is all about confirmation bias, is how we process information, and we only like people who agree with us. We don't even want to bother to listen to the other side. Whereas in a healthy democracy, you have to learn to the other side and your side so that you can better debate your persuasive essay. Because in your persuasive essay, you should have what the other side says, and then you learn to rebut what the other side, and it strengthens your argument. And so just having confirmation bias makes the United States or people so narrow-minded because their world shrinks to just what they think. So that's called confirmation bias. This is what media looks like these days. In other words, these are all the media that's on the left, that's Democrat, and these are all the media that's on the right. And neutral is what you want to aim for. Okay, you want to read things that are neutral, balanced, and objective so that it becomes the O. Now this is 2018. So in 2018, these were all of the neutral. Now let's move forward to 2021. Nobody is neutral. Did you see that the neutral sign just disappears? This is because from 2018 to 2021, nobody's neutral. Everyone's polarized into you're either a Democrat or you're either a Republican, and then you've got whole families splitting up because nobody can, if you talk politics and you're a certain supporter of whatever, you get kicked out of the dinner table or something. So this half of all of these, they're all for the Democrats, and on this side, they're all for Republicans. So everything is now partisan. Therefore, you can't believe anything you see anywhere because everybody has taken a side. Why? Ratings. Ratings bring in ads. Ads bring in money. So it's all money, money, money. And Zuckerberg. So that's called, and all of this is known as media bias. This is when the media is not objective. So therefore, the O in kapow, that means all of this, they're not credible sources. You just knock all this, and these are all popular sources. Notice how none of these are scholarly sources. They're all popular sources, and so that's why popular sources, you have to take it with a grain of salt. So you got to do the kapow. And then here you have fallacies. And so you have different kinds of illogical, fallacy is an illogical argument. And so during the 2020 election, if you attack the other person, calling him names, you're slow Joe, you're stupid Jim, that's known as an ad hominem fallacy. When you attack the other person and you don't pay attention to the issues. And so if that candidate, all he does is attack other people, you know not to believe in that candidate. If that candidate talks about the issues, then you believe in that candidate. Because ad hominem fallacies, you're calling someone a slow Joe, that's making a claim with no evidence. How do you know he's a slow Joe? Did you just make that up off the top of your head? So that becomes an ad hominem fallacy. Appeal to authority fallacy. So if I say, well, Michael Jordan wears those sneakers, you should wear those sneakers too. What makes Michael Jordan, or anybody else for that matter, more of an expert than anybody else? And so if a famous actor told you to do something, that's called an appeal to authority. Is that logical? So that means that the appeal to logos, it's not logical. You want to listen to scientists, doctors, not celebrities, and politicians. So that is also an appeal to authority fallacy. And then you have appeal to ignorance. Hey, come on, hang out with me. We will be great friends. Sure, why not? Let's do it. So doing something for the heck of it without rhyme or reason. This fallacy argues when you argue that your conclusion must be true because there is no evidence against it. So you would say that, well, I guess heaven exists, so that might be a fallacy. Bandwagon fallacy, just because everyone else does it does not make it right. So that's like, hey, let's go smoking. Everyone does it. Let's want to smoke. So that's the bandwagon. This happens on the shopping channel. Everybody's going to buy that shirt or else. And so that's the bandwagon fallacy. Begging the question fallacy. The fallacy of begging the question occurs when an argument premises assumes the truth of, oh, this is circular thinking. Circular thinking means that just because it sounds true doesn't mean it is true. Okay, so that means you still have to prove it. Just for one way to avoid begging the question is to write out your premises and conclusions in a short outline form. If you notice any gaps, any steps that are required to move from one premise to the next, write down the premises, write down the statements that would fill those. In other words, in order to avoid begging the question, make sure that when you write your essay, make sure that it flows logically. Make sure that all of your body paragraphs relate back to your thesis statement and that you're not talking in circles so that you don't have an incoherent argument. A loaded question is a question that contains a controversial or unjustified assumption, such as a presumption of guilt. An example of a loaded question: have you finally stopped cheating on exams? The question implies that the respondent has cheated in the past. If the respondent answers yes, she agrees that she cheated in the past. If she answers no, then she is still saying that she is still cheating. So have you finally stopped drinking? That implies that you've always been drinking, you're still drinking, and that implies that whoever you're asking it to is guilty. And a complex question is a fallacy in which the answer to a given question presupposes, that's the same thing as that's the same thing as a loaded question, in which you assume that the person you're asking is actually guilty. And usually they usually do that with politicians. Now, what is your real position on immigration? Didn't you say in a previous discussion that you were against immigration reform and you wanted a path to citizenship? In other words, you imply that politician has flip-flopped in the past and will flip-flop again and stuff like that. So that's a loaded question. And then usually a very sharp politician will go, I'm not going to answer a loaded question like that. See, and as soon as they catch you, that makes that guy look real smart because he caught that journalist asking a loaded question. Okay, so that was really funny when one politician did that. Non sequitur. The fallacy of non sequitur means that when you say one thing and then it doesn't follow. It occurs when you say one claim does not, the cause and effect has nothing to do with each other. So it's a deceptively plausible appearance of valid reasoning, but there is an obvious lack of connection between the given. So if I would say, oh, this I went over last time. So that, I guess that means that all Chinese people are infected with COVID-19 because they have slanted eyes. So this is a non sequitur because one has nothing to do with the other. Does having slanted eyes or dark hair mean you're always infected with COVID-19?
No.
No. So non sequitur fallacy falls under the fallacy of, is also known as the fallacy of overgeneralization, and that's where stereotypes arise when claims give rise to false conclusions that make no sense and have no connection to one another. And so here, red herring. Don't worry, we're almost finished. Red herring is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question. Red herrings are used when you give false evidence to distract people from the truth. Usually, if you're writing a mystery story, we always want to confuse the reader to make this mystery story last longer. So that's known as a red herring hint. Or you try to deflect from the truth. And politicians give a lot of red herrings. So let's say you ask a politician, what really happened when you went out with that actress? And then red herring means that you don't even answer the question. You answer the question with another answer. So you would say, well, you see, I've always been faithful to my wife, but my policy on immigration is. In other words, you change the subject altogether. And then you distract the reader with a different topic, and that's a red herring, is when you mislead or distract from the original question. Then the journalist will get annoyed and say, you're not answering my questions. I repeat, what did you have a mistress when you were in such and such, or whatever. That's when the journalist gets really pissed, because the more the politician does the red herring, the more the journalist gets pissed off. You notice that. So journalists know about all of these fallacies, and politicians know how to get out of them. Slippery slope fallacy occurs when someone makes a claim about a series of events that would lead to one major event, usually a bad event. In this fallacy, a person makes, this is simply like a false dilemma. In other words, if you don't do as I say, I'm going to divorce you. In other words, you create a false dilemma. If it's either this or that. You either do as I say, or else we are going to get a divorce. In other words, if you're married to someone like that who's always making false dilemma fallacies, in other words, if you don't do as I say, it's going to lead to a bad event. That is not a correct cause and effect. That's an illogical argument, and nothing is going to make the sky fall down like that. So that's a slippery slope fallacy. So in order to avoid a slippery slope fallacy, you have to have reasons that follow your thesis statement, and then you have to have in-text citations that support your reasons. So if we enact any kind of gun control, the next thing you know, we won't be allowed to have guns at all. When that happens, we won't be able to defend ourselves against terrorist attacks. And when that happens, terrorists will take over our country. Therefore, gun control laws will cause us to lose our country to terrorists. That's slippery slope. Okay? If we cannot elect Ronald Reagan, he is an actor. He has no political experience. Because he is an actor, when he gets the nuclear codes, he will have no idea what to do with him. If we elect an actor as a president, he will lose the nuclear codes and blow up the world. And yes, they did say this about Ronald Reagan. And what does being an actor have to do with losing nuclear codes? Yes, slippery slope thinking can also be considered non sequitur, since this claim makes no sense. Okay? And they also said the same thing about Trump. And right now they're doing it on Biden, saying he's really old. So, slippery slope thinking is very, very prominent. And if you don't know about fallacies, you'll believe it because it sounds logical. A straw man fallacy occurs when someone takes another person's argument or point, distorts it or exaggerates it in some kind of extreme way, and then attacks the extreme extortion as if that is really the claim the first person is making. In a straw man fallacy, which politicians use to deflect the issue or dodge a sensitive question by changing, that's the same thing, by changing the subject or distorting the answer. Okay, that's we already did that. This also occurs in non sequitur, slippery slope, and I think there was another one, red herring. Yeah, when the politician. So here, I think pollution from humans contributes to climate change. So you think humans are directly responsible for extreme weather, like hurricanes, and have caused droughts in the U.S.? If that's the case, we may need to go to the Southwest and perform a rain dance. Okay, so that means that if we go do a rain dance, that will get rid of the pollution that contributes to climate change. Climate change will disappear if we do a rain dance. Does that make sense? You're laughing.
Not even close.
Not even close. Appeal to fear fallacy. This type of fallacy is one that's noted in its name, plays upon people's fear. In particular, this fallacy presents a scary future if a certain decision is made today. Elizabeth Smith does not understand foreign policy. If you elect Elizabeth Smith as president, we will be attacked by terrorists. President Trump, Biden, put anybody's name in there, does not understand foreign policy. It is the president's fault that Putin attacked Ukraine because that president made America look weak. Where is your concrete evidence to back up this claim? How do you know that Putin wouldn't have attacked regardless of who was president? So that is appeal to fear fallacy. Or if we don't attack country X, that country X is going to attack us. So we have to take up arms and we have to attack country X, whatever that is. So that is the appeal, and this is very
Prominent
effective.
in politics.
Yeah, everybody uses this, okay? In all countries, all cultures, because we're all fearful. You see, we all want to be protected, and that's it, okay? And here is in a 10 common that I just went over, and it is in a nutshell. And I believe that's it. Bingo! We have only 2 more weeks left to this class.